Big news is coming out of the NFL, and this one involves none other than Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford. Reports are buzzing that Las Vegas Raiders minority owner Tom Brady recently met with Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford at his home in Montana. This story, first reported by Jordan Schultz, has sparked a lot of speculation about Stafford's future and whether the Raiders are making a serious push to bring him to Las Vegas. There are a few moving pieces to this story. Earlier today, Deanna Rini released a separate report on the situation, but what we're hearing now suggests that the Raiders have a real interest in Stafford. And honestly, I'm excited about this possibility. Stafford is a highly skilled quarterback, and with the Raiders' current coaching staff, he could be a perfect fit. Now let's talk about Jordan Schultz for a second. He's a reliable source who has broken major stories before. For example, there was some confusion about Malcolm Koonce's injury, with mixed reports on whether it was a torn ACL or just a broken leg. Schultz was the one who confidently reported that Koonce had in fact torn his ACL and would be out for the season, and he was right. So when Schultz now reports that Brady not only met with Stafford, but actively tried to convince him to join the Raiders, people are taking it seriously. The report also states that several teams are interested in Stafford if the Rams decide to move him, but the Raiders are believed to be the most aggressive in pursuing him. Interestingly, about an hour after Schultz's report, Ian Rappaport shared his own version of the story. However, Rappaport's take was quite different. He claimed that Brady and Stafford simply ran into each other at a ski resort in Montana, and their meeting was not planned, in-depth, or part of any recruitment efforts. So now we have two different narratives. One suggesting Brady is working to bring Stafford to Las Vegas, and another saying it was just a casual encounter. Which one is true? That remains to be seen, but one thing is certain. The Raiders' quarterback situation is something to keep a close eye on. What do you think? Would Matthew Stafford be a good fit for the Raiders? Stay tuned for more updates. If you really believe that Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford just happened to run into each other at a ski resort in Montana at the exact same time, I've got a bridge to sell you. The reality is they were together over the weekend, and this was no coincidence. Multiple teams are reportedly interested in Stafford, but Brady has been leading the charge to bring him to the Raiders, if the Rams decide to trade him. Now, while this is an exciting development, we need to take a step back and consider the rules. The Rams have given Stafford permission to explore trade options, but are the Raiders actually allowed to meet with him and start recruiting? That's not entirely clear, even though Stafford has been given the freedom to find his own trade destination. Whether or not the Raiders can officially engage in discussions with him remains a gray area. However, here's what we do know. When a well-respected reporter like Jordan Schultz says that Tom Brady hosted Stafford at his home in Montana, that's not just speculation. That's a fact. This wasn't some accidental meetup on the ski slopes. Tom Brady is actively recruiting Stafford to join the Raiders, and the team's interest is very real. Think about it. If Brady is personally involved, that likely means team owner Mark Davis has given him the green light. He's essentially saying, go get Matthew Stafford. And it doesn't stop there. At the NFL Combine, both JohnSpytek and PeteCarroll were asked about Brady's role with the team, and their responses were quite different. Spytek acknowledged that Brady is available and that they can talk to him, but he never outright confirmed that Brady is involved in day-to-day operations. It felt like he was being careful with his words, possibly downplaying Brady's involvement. So, what does this all mean? The Raiders are making moves behind the scenes. Whether or not a deal happens, one thing is clear. Tom Brady isn't just a minority owner sitting on the sidelines. He's working to shape the future of this team, and Matthew Stafford might just be part of that vision. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. There's been some mixed messaging when it comes to Tom Brady's role with the Raiders. On one hand, JohnSpytek seemed to downplay Brady's involvement, making it sound like he isn't really calling the shots. On the other hand, PeteCarroll had a completely different take, implying that Brady is very much involved with the team. While Carroll didn't say outright that they talk all the time, he did mention that Brady makes himself available whenever needed, which suggests he's playing a bigger role than some might think. Now, if Brady is actively recruiting Matthew Stafford, that likely didn't just happen on its own. That kind of effort usually comes from someone higher up giving the green light, most likely JohnSpytek himself. It's becoming clear that the Raiders are seriously interested in Stafford, and if this move happens, it could be a game changer for them. To add to this, let's talk about what Diana Rossini reported earlier today. Her report came out 5 or 6 hours before the others, which makes it even more credible. She stated that Stafford has been testing the market over the past few weeks and has drawn significant interest, particularly from the Raiders and the Giants. That's a big deal. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Looking ahead to the NFL draft, the Tennessee Titans hold the number. First overall pick, and they're almost certainly going to take CamWard. That's pretty much locked in. The Cleveland Browns have the number 2 pick, and while they could take a quarterback, they're still committed to Deshaun Watson, whose contract is fully guaranteed for at least the next 2 or 3 years. That makes it unlikely they draft a quarterback right now. Then, at number 3, we have the New York Giants. They'll likely have a shot at the second best quarterback in the draft class. But instead of focusing solely on a young prospect, they're also showing serious interest in Matthew Stafford. That's huge. It means that even with a top draft pick in their hands, the Giants still see Stafford as a valuable option. So here's what we know. The Raiders are aggressively pursuing Stafford. Tom Brady is playing a role in recruiting him, and the Giants are also in the mix. This offseason is shaping up to be very, very interesting. Who will land Stafford, and how will this shake up the quarterback market? Stay tuned. This story is far from over. One of the most interesting things about this situation is that the Raiders are seriously considering Matthew Stafford. Just yesterday, PeteCarroll made it clear they are in win-now mode. He basically said they aren't focusing on building for the future. They want to compete for a Super Bowl right now. Now, some might ask, isn't every team always in win-now mode? The reality is that's not always the case. Some teams take a long-term approach, choosing to rebuild by accumulating draft picks and developing young talent over several years. We've seen teams like the Chicago Bears follow this strategy, and it has worked out well for them. They're in a great position now. The Carolina Panthers have also taken a similar path, and while they showed promise toward the end of last season, we'll have to see how things play out for them next year. On the other hand, some teams take a different approach. Instead of rebuilding from the ground up, they focus on retooling and staying competitive by making strategic moves, like adding veteran quarterbacks. The New Orleans Saints are a good example of this, consistently bringing in experienced QBs to keep their roster competitive. Then, there are teams like the Raiders, who have been hesitant to go all in on a quarterback, despite needing one for years. Instead, they've tried to build a strong foundation by making smart draft picks and developing talent. The problem? This strategy hasn't really worked for them. Whenever the Raiders do draft talented players, like Malcolm Kuntze and Trayvon Moehrig, there's only a short window to capitalize on their rookie contracts. Once those players become expensive veterans, it becomes much harder to manage the salary cap. For example, when Kuntze eventually commands an $18 million salary, that's a big hit for the team. Right now, the Raiders seem to be aware of this cycle. In a few years, players like Jackson Powers-Johnson could be the highest-paid center in the league, and Brock Bowers could become the highest-paid tight end. The team has to strike while the window is open, which is why making a move for Matthew Stafford could make sense. The question is, will the Raiders finally take the leap and go all in for a quarterback who can help them win now? Or will they continue to play the long game and hope for better results down the road? One thing is certain, this decision will shape their future for years to come. Big contracts are coming for the Raiders' top players. Max Crosby is already one of the highest-paid stars, and soon others will follow. That's why if the Raiders want to win, now is the time. They have young talent on rookie contracts, the number, 6th overall pick in the draft, and a golden opportunity to go all in. The pieces are there. They just need to make the right moves. One thing that sets this team apart from previous years is the coaching staff. The Raiders arguably have the best coaching group they've had in the last 20 years. On the defensive side, PeteCarroll brings championship experience and leadership, and Patrick Graham, their defensive coordinator, has already proven himself as one of the top defensive minds in the league. Graham's defensive schemes are elite, making him a sought-after name in coaching circles. Having both Carroll and Graham leading the defense is a rare advantage, and it could make a massive difference in the Raiders' success. But it's not just the defense. The offense is in great hands, too. Chip Kelly, one of the most respected offensive minds in football, is now part of the Raiders' coaching staff. His track record speaks for itself. When he coached the Philadelphia Eagles, he led 2 top-5 offenses in 4 years, with the others ranking in the top 12 and top 15. Even in college, Kelly found success. His UCLA team consistently ranked in the top 30 in scoring, which is impressive considering the challenges of competing at that level. Then, when he had the opportunity to work with Ohio State, his offense played a crucial role in winning a national championship. With a coaching staff this strong, the Raiders are in a position they haven't been in for a long time. The talent is there, the leadership is there, and if they make the right decisions, like securing a top quarterback, they could be serious contenders this season. The question remains, will the Raiders take the leap and go all in, or will they let this golden opportunity slip away? The answer could define the future of this franchise. Chip Kelly brings something special to the table. He knows how to install an offense. That's not something every play caller or offensive mind can do successfully. We've seen talented coaches struggle with this before. Shane Waldron had his chance with the Bears, but things didn't click. Maybe it was the system, maybe it was the lack of leadership, but it didn't work out. The same goes for Luke Getsy, who faced challenges both with the Bears and the Raiders. Installing a successful offense takes more than just play calling. It takes vision, execution, and the right supporting staff. That's where Kelly stands out. He's done it before, and that gives the Raiders a real chance to build something special. That's why now is the time to go all in. Teams that take bold steps can turn things around quickly. Look at the Washington Commanders. They went from holding the number, second overall pick, to playing in a championship game just a few years later. The Houston Texans were struggling for years, but after drafting C.J. Stroud, they made back-to-back playoff appearances. Before that, they had only one real standout season with Deshaun Watson. One key move can change everything, and the Raiders are in a position to make that move. The Raiders already have a strong coaching staff, solid building blocks, and the draft capital to add impact players. With the number 6 and number 37 overall picks, they have a chance to grab top-tier talent. At number 6, they could land the best cornerback or wide receiver in the draft. Then, in the second round, they could target a dominant center, a powerful guard, or a disruptive defensive tackle, positions where second-round picks often develop into long-term starters. And let's not forget the third round. Good teams find hidden gems there, players who might not be immediate stars but can develop into key contributors. If the Raiders front office gets it right, they could add multiple starters from this draft alone. This is a defining moment for the Raiders. They have the pieces. They have the opportunity. The question is, will they take it? The Raiders have an opportunity to land impactful players even in the later rounds of the draft. A guy like DJ Glaze, for example, could develop into a solid starter as a rookie and provide an upgrade at his position. You don't always need a first-round pick to find value. Teams that draft well make the most of every round. If the Raiders decide to go all in this year with Matthew Stafford as their quarterback, they could legitimately make a playoff push. Instead of sitting back and planning for the next 20 years, something they've done for far too long, it's time to take action. Pay Stafford what he wants, whether it's $50 million per year in total value, and structure the deal strategically. A $25 million cap hit this year, $30 million next year, $50 million in year 3, and a couple of void years would allow them to maximize their Super Bowl window. Those 3 years with Stafford could make all the difference. The Raiders have already built a strong defensive line, and they can further solidify it by bringing back Malcolm Kuntz, which PeteCarroll has reportedly made a priority. Add a few more key pieces, and this team could be truly competitive. Some people may doubt it, but I believe this roster has the potential to be legit. One of the most exciting aspects of this situation is that Tom Brady is actively recruiting quarterbacks. Today, it's Matthew Stafford. Tomorrow, it could be someone else, a rookie from the draft perhaps. The Raiders clearly want to take the veteran QB route, and I'm all for it. Stafford's experience could also be invaluable in developing younger quarterbacks like Carter Bradley and Aiden O'Connell, helping shape the future of the franchise. What do you guys think? Drop a comment below, give this a thumbs up, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm looking forward to seeing how this all plays out. Stay tuned for the next update.